Welcome to the 8th edition of Meeting with the Authors this year at 54th and 55th Bitef. Tonight we are talking about I Put a Spell on You, a performance by Ehsan Hemat. Yes. Also, we are more than happy to have Gilles Bollet, the performer.
He's also the
creative associate of the production, and also Yasen Vasilyev, poet, writer, and dramaturg in this case, in the case of this production. Just a few notes: the production was created in 2018. And the production company, your company, is second to the right. First, I would like to ask Ehsan, since this is your first time at Bitef, reading your biography, one finds a lot of interesting details about your development as an artist, being an actor in Iran, then a dancer, then a choreographer. Could you tell us something about your development as an artist, and maybe I found this peculiar thing in your biography that your career as a dancer started in Amir Reza Kohestani's work, which is interesting for us because we had Amir Reza Kohestani's hearing at this very stage 4 years ago at 51st Bitef. So that's why I'm bringing that up. So can you just tell us more about your...
Sure. So I was born in Shiraz.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Yeah? You don't hear me? Okay.
For recording.
Okay. I was born in Shiraz, and actually I got attracted to theater because my uncle and my aunt, my uncle's wife, they're both actors, classical actors. So at the age of 8, I think I saw my first theater, but I wasn't thinking that I would be on stage. And 17 years old, I found myself on stage, repeating my uncle. And actually we had this theater troupe, Nehr in Shiraz, where we were like fully passionate and working, young kids creating different work, and we never thought it would be our job at the end. And then there were several pieces. I mean, Reza at some point he started working on dancing glasses, and he asked me if I could choreograph that piece, and I was like, what do you mean with that choreography? So I need some dance parts, and I started researching about dance. He actually offered me a few DVDs, and from day to another I realized that I want to dance. Actually, I don't want to remain being an actor. And so there the journey started. I was 19. In Iran back then with analog internet, trying to find sources and material to train myself. But then this dancing glasses got a successful piece, and there was a big tour, 4 years, out in Europe, in South America, in Canada, North America. So I asked the guys. Unfortunately, I couldn't travel with them because I had to pass my military duty, so I got replaced in that production. But anytime they went out, I asked for a source material to bring it, and they did so. They were so nice to bring some books and some DVDs and stuff. And back then we were thinking we were practicing modern dance. Yeah, modern dance. But they had a trip. They went to Vienna, and there I asked them to bring materials from William Forsythe and Meg Stewart's, and there when they asked in the library in Vienna, we are looking for modern dance, and they were like, which kind of dance? And they said William Forsythe and Meg Stewart. The lady from the library told my friends, you want some contemporary dance material. And so they came back to Shiraz and they were like, Ehsan, it's no longer modern dancing, this is contemporary dancing. And they were like, okay. So we trained ourselves really, like the three of us, we knew that this is our journey, we trained ourselves with all this limitation in a small apartment with our bad English. We studied a DVD for 9 months from William Forsythe. Really like studied it chapter by chapter and then taught each other. There were three of us. We studied like each of us a few chapters and then we were teaching each other the material. And a year later, I worked with William Forsythe. So for me, it was very clear this is my journey. It's been a lot of ups and downs, of course. Not to the Corona, even before Corona, a lot of ups and downs, but there was always a sign that this is the journey, and I'm happy to be able to continue still. This past year was, for all of us, was very, very, very difficult, but it's amazing to see you, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I hope the show in itself has enough to offer, so I don't want to do a lot of blah, 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 blah.
We have to do some blah, blah, because we have more questions. And now about the show, the critics have obviously wrote about your show, about your production as a clear message against the society of control, society of surveillance, and for freedom. But what can we do about that issue in today's world when it seems that the means of surveillance have gone to a much higher level than the social debate about how to control them? Is there a solution?
I'm not offering, it's a very difficult question. I'm not offering any solution. I'm just giving a reflection of these two different societies that I've experienced by so far. This is something I think you should know at least, because I'm speaking to you at the moment. In the society of control, people think that certain problems belong to society of discipline. And in society of discipline, people think that some problems belong to the other society. So we actually kind of, in my eyes, we're ignoring our problems. We always say, this is from the neighbors, this is not our problems. I think it's good to open up to see that we all go in the same direction and we are all separated at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to ask you the next question. Rather than talking about the society of surveillance, you sometimes describe a term that is most central to your work, and that's social isolation. Is that right? Did you find that term central for your work? How can you? What can you tell us about that term? When did you? When, how, and in which parts of the world did you face this phenomena in different ways?
So isolation back in Iran is quite obvious, right? Like, it's very difficult for Iranians to travel after all. So it's a forced isolation, not only from the system in Iran, but also from the rest of the world. But also in Belgium, I found there were different categories, and these categories, they cannot interfere. It happens sometimes. But like I told you, like I mentioned in the interview, when I first arrived in Belgium, of course in 2007, the diversity was not like nowadays. It wasn't, there was not much of diversity, so and I didn't have much of dancing job, so I used my background, and I was doing some acting in TV series to just have some work, earn money. But I was always given the roles that are like refugee or a terrorist or you know. So this is kind of categorizing, isolating people. Or maybe it was also a question of language, but I believe this categorization exists, and it's sort of isolation.
And my last question before talking to the other guests would be about the drone, of course, as a symbol of this dystopian future. So, is this a performance about the future or about the presence? And how far is this dystopian future from us?
Well, I think it's about future. It's about this moment here and now. It's about this period of the time. But I remember during the creation, Gilles was telling me, "Have you read the book 1984, George Orwell?" And I was like, "No, I didn't read it." But he said that it is very close to the theme you choose. And I didn't want to read it because that could affect the world. But then afterwards, when the creation was finished, I read the book and I was like, okay, it's the same atmosphere, is a dystopia, and he wrote the book in 1940 and he named it 1984. So I hope it won't be our future. I really hope it won't be our future.
Thank you. And now I would like to talk to Gilles Paulet about the choreography aspect of the performance. Firstly, could you tell us something about the process, about the techniques and exercises that a performer needs to go through and face in order to take part in this kind of a show? How physical is it? What are the other aspects? How does the process look like? And whatever you would like to share with us about that.
We very long went for a development of a technique that Ehsan came up with, which in the beginning literally was one limb, one movement, which for example was this. But before you do the movement, before you execute the movement, it's always stopped, as if by an external force. So instead of going there, I will go there. And then somehow we're trying to find a freedom into, okay, if you stop me here, what about there? What if you stop? So each time offering a new limb or new place in the body and trying a new trajectory with that place in the body to then still find your freedom that way. I don't know, is it clear? Yeah. And from there on we started even more cutting that off. So really censoring, constantly censoring our movements, our ideas, by adding counts, which were very unorganic. So in our head, we have counts like 1, 2, 3, 4, till 13, then till 8, then till 15, then till 4, then till it's like, and it keeps going, and it's never predictable for us, for us now, yes, because we know it by heart, but it's never organic. Like musically. So that's the main part. Then there's that part of finding that freedom, and the solos, for example, from Mustafa, is kind of the same, but with emotions and almost as if he's doing text, but he's not doing text. He's going from one emotion, cut, another emotion, cut, another emotion, like constantly trying to find freedom within that censorship. And it's actually really funny because we performed in Iran with this piece where dancing is not allowed, and we had to come in front of a comedy of censorship, and they have a very clear, strict rule, which is that they don't want anything too sexual, they don't want anything too anti-political, which I'm surprised that this one passed so easily. But with the too sexual, for example, anything that's a little bit too undulated, that's a no, yes? but because we constantly cut and we constantly censor our movement, we can't undulate and somehow bring it, and we passed. And Ehsan even got the prize there, which we played in a big festival, and a nice thing is that like for the first time since when? Since the revolution?
Yeah, I think so.
So since '78, for the first time since '78, they gave a prize in that theater festival, which is much older, right?
So this was to be correct. This was the first choreographical award in Iran.
Yeah. But they call it movement design. Because choreography sounds, is to them too much associated to sexual dances. So movement design is somehow okay. So somehow finding the freedom with censorship.
Okay, thank you. We might talk about that some more when the audience joins us, I have a feeling. But now I would like to also talk to Yasin Vasilyev, a dramaturg of this play, of this performance, and of course the most obvious question would be what is the role of a dramaturg in a production like this. But I would also like you to talk about your relationship to Ehsan, because this is becoming somewhat of a permanent affair. You have been working together on another project in 2020, and maybe we'll again. So we would like to hear from you.
Thank you for the question. So we met with Ehsan at a dramaturgy workshop in Sofia at Anti-Static Festival at 2018, and we clicked. And basically he had already gotten the grants to produce the piece, and he had already went through the whole movement research, so he had a very clear perspective of what the piece is going to be, and he had the dramaturgy already done. So I was quite lucky to be invited to be the dramaturg of the piece where the dramaturgy is already finished. But then why we clicked, I think, was that I was very preoccupied with these topics of like discipline and control, and of how in a society of control where we are given freedom, paradoxically this produces like an effect of being the same within our freedom. And so I was also writing poems on these topics at the same time, so I joined the piece more as a writer of these monologues, which I went to the production in Ghent, and I was writing, and then I was giving these texts to the dancers. They would edit them and try out, and they would write again. And yes, so there was a process, and now we're starting, as you said, like a new rehearsal process, which is still actually in research, and then I'm like engaged from the start.
What about the piece that you did last year, your first?
This is my first piece.
No, but your second. Somewhere I read that your second piece was a solo.
Yeah.
Also, you also worked. Is that the one that is going out? It has premiered? Or?
No, next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the premiere is for October 2022. So we still have a very long process, but from the beginning in this project, from the beginning we worked together. It's really dramatic of this new piece.
Thank you. Now it would be a perfect time to have the audience ask questions and join the conversation. Yes? No? Uh-huh.
No.
No, it was the lady.
I'm so sorry.
You're welcome. Just say thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the beautiful performance. I wanted more to give a comment, and then you can have some reaction to this, because my impression was that in this performance it was very well balanced. These elements of introducing video art and drone filming and this direct technology on stage with dancing theater, and it was very poetic. didn't go into some direct illustration of political situation, which was really for me a relief. Because usually when we include these things like robots or something, sometimes it's really like placate illustration of what is happening. So I also teach to some visual artists as a filmologist. So it is sometimes difficult to give comment about these elements of visual technology in theater. So for me this is like a very wonderful example how to balance these things, but still it was very well kept. My impression is this dancing real theatrical element, and only these other things were included. They didn't dominate the drones or some projections or computers. So for me it was very nicely done. And how did you get this poetry on stage? That would be the question.
May I answer? So, like Yasin mentioned, he had already poetries about this topic. So when he came to the production, he again generated some new text, but we tried out many different texts. Like Gilles, after all, he had several texts, and what we did, we cut into his poetry. Actually, what you have in the brochure now is not what he edited himself, is what we choose from his poetry. So it was already it was existing poetry, which was very close to the theme of the work, and then on top of that he generated some new text. But then all at the end we mixed everything. Yeah.
Just one more question about the costume. It was also very nice. So who did the costumes?
Thank you.
Sasha Kovacevic is from here, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Sasha's there.
Every give you money. You will have to talk. She's president of the jury, she's not allowed to talk.
Society of control. But another member of the jury can.
Oh, yeah, okay. But she's not president, so she can't.
Yes, I would like to first thank you for this performance. I found it really interesting, and since both dance and the digital surveillance are both my favorite topics to investigate, I'm also a journalist. So I would like to ask the whole crew what your personal approach to, I mean, for performing arts today, the use of the digital platforms and internet to connect with the audience are really crucial. I mean, as you said, how you try to find pieces of choreography to be inspired from, they're all on those platforms that are used for surveilling, mass surveillance of people. I mean, the private big tech companies who are stealing our data for manipulating us and surveil us all the time. So how do you, I mean, how can performing arts resist this and still question those platforms and this technique, but on the other hand, need them? How do you do? I mean, how do you spread your information and how do you connect during these times?
This is a very complicated question.
Yes, I know. I think that long time.
Maybe the resistance is within, like, insisting on being on on the human body and the live meeting, and I think that dance and performing arts in general are very hard to commodify and to be turned into a product within this digital economy, even when they're streamed. And I think maybe the good side of the internet is what Ehsan was saying, that you have access to all this information and like you get professional opportunities maybe if you work hard enough, but then the essence of the work is live, and that cannot be changed. And in that sense, I'm very interested also in thinking of choreography as like expanded as a social movement also, as like how are we together, and this is something that can be exercised within a rehearsal process or on stage, of bringing people together and acting also collectively to change maybe the situation that we're in. And it's something that comes up now, and it's an essay that I was very inspired and preoccupied with, and I want to mention it, by Nina Power. It's called From the Sad Body to the Moving Body, and she gives a very nice overview of how digital culture is basically making us kind of like numb and detached from our bodies and from our desires, so that our desires go not to other bodies but to images. And then she goes on to, and this is the sad body that she describes, and then she goes on to describe like the moving body as like social movements and protests and gatherings and practicing of democracy. So maybe within the very nature of performing arts is the answer to your question.
I mean, I'll just say something, just a small comment. When you just said this, I remembered a movie by a local movie maker. She's called Marta Popivoda. She has this movie that's called Yugoslavia, How Choreography Moved Our Collective Body. If at any time in your life you have a chance to have a gander, I think it sums up in a movie language exactly what you're saying now, like a form of resistance and a form of actually having people together and having them live together.
A very pragmatic question. As long as nudity as a shame is mentioned in the texture, and you have the scene when Mustafa at the end of his solo takes his clothes off, did you censor yourself in Iran, or how did you change the scene, and how did you deal with real censorship? Or self-censorship, which is a delicate thing.
Do you mean during the show in Tehran?
Yes.
Okay, there is something maybe I have to mention now. In this theater, which is, I found a very charming theater, is a different setting that we usually perform. Now, what happens now, because of the angle of the, this is very technical, but I'm going to say, Mustafa's part, when he gets naked, is much more visible here than in the black box. When we perform in the black box, you see the show from the top, and you see the full image, the full screen, and these black parts where he's holding the blanket and Mustafa is in front of it is absolutely dark. You don't see anything. And before that, in the thermal image, you realize that he's getting naked. But there in Tehran, we just asked Mustafa to didn't take out his underwear. And that was fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The girl was more censored. She had to get covered. She had to wear, of course, a headscarf, long trousers underneath. We weren't allowed to touch her. Like in the beginning, when we touched, we weren't allowed to touch her, so we had to just do Mustafa and I. But that's the only censorship that we did.
And you didn't do the circus show there that you did last
Not yet. But we're working on it. First we're going to do it in a prison and see how that goes.
Well, if there are no more questions, oh, there are.
I don't have a question, I have two comments, 2 points that I would like to make, rather personal ones. I'm Ivan Medenic, I'm the artistic director of the festival. Thank you, Ehsan, Ehsan, and Gilles for this wonderful show. And what are those 2 points? Let's put the mask on again. I mean, I'm glad that in the discussion the question of the hybridity on the show was raised. That is, you know, like dance and video, digital art combined and acting as well. Because to give you a context, although this festival exists since 67 and presents its subtitle as New Theatre Tendencies, we still have a discourse in our theatrical circles whether something is dance or digital art or theater, and plus we have a festival of contemporary dance, so you can read comments, oh, this is more for the other festival, it's not for our festival, etc. And this show shows that these distinctions are completely superficial, and all dance performances that we saw on this Bitef, if I may say it, are proving the same thing. Amanda Pina's show as well. There was text, there was acting, there was wonderful video art, etc. To develop the thought, if this is a thought at all, although there is this hybridity of different forms, in the very center as a protagonist is human body. And I mean, this scene between a human body and drone, which Gilles performed at the end, was really very, very touching. At least for me, it was like pure 100% conflict from a Greek tragedy, so to say. And that's why I would like to emphasize the role of performer in contemporary theater, and to put it in a broader social context. Here is Ksenia Jurovic, who is the producer of our program, and she knows, her soul, her heart knows how it was difficult to get you all guys here in the context of pandemic. Especially you coming from Tehran, from different parts of the world, but with other companies as well. It was even more difficult, of course, with all this restriction of traveling, etc. We had for the first time 2 cancellations, but cancellations coming from subsidized state theaters, German subsidized state theaters, who are getting, no, Sharmin, okay, I know that you would come if you were invited to the festival with the Maxim Gorky Theater. And then, on the other hand, we have experiences with independent companies, with like medieval, for me you are like medieval traveling players, who need to travel and to move and to because that's how you're earning your money, but that's also about theater and performing. Like a very strong urge to present your work. So I would like also to finish this sort of sentimental personal overview with mentioning one or stressing one presence here, and this is of you, Gilles, because we saw Gilles here as a dancer and actor. And 2 days ago, we saw him in a side program in Circo Balkana as a circus artist. And Gilles was in Belgrade, for those of you who do not recognize him, like 4 years ago, as a dancer / performer / actor in Mountain Olympus, Jan Fabro's 24 hours long Mountain Olympus. So that's for me, sorry that I'm using you as a symbol, but that's for me a symbol of this medieval traveling player who will survive any context of social, political, and medical restrictions. So I would like Yasin and Ehsan to see you again in Belgrade on Bitef, or on a dance festival as well. And of course, Gilles, I hope that you will be coming regularly back to Belgrade, as you have been already doing.
Pleasure.
Maybe this is the right place to stop. Thank you so much for having your show here and your production here and having this wonderful conversation. We can continue having a drink. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Artistic side